Do you suffer from parent guilt? Is it one of the things that you experience every time you go to work and you're doing something, but you miss the game? And we're going to go live over here on Instagram as well. Today, we're going to be discussing the parent guilt that most high performers face because it's one of the things that my clients come to me and they express and they say, man, how do you balance this? How do you balance work? You got several businesses, a real estate portfolio, but at the same time, you're able to have a family and your family is thriving. Well, today we're going to be discussing some of the things that you could do to not have parent guilt. And one of the first principles that I want you to understand today is less time does not equal less love. I'm going to say that again. Less time does not equal less love. See, most high performers and people in general, they believe that because they don't spend as much time with their significant other, with their kids, that they feel guilty about that. And that's simply not true because less time does not equal less love. And so let's break that down. What do I mean by when I say that? What I mean is your kids. So, for example, I have a 14-year-old, I have a 4-month-old, and then I have a wife. Now, the time that I spend with my 14-year-old, he likes to connect when playing Fortnite. He likes to talk about very specific things. He likes quality time. And so if we watch a movie together, he's good. If we go hang out real quick or go to like a park or something like that, he feels good. His love tank is filled. Now, after that, like you give him like 20, 30 minutes, he's gonna be like, hey dad, I'm gonna go play Fortnite, right? Like the time that he requires is just not as high as it is with my 4-month-old. She requires a lot more right now. And so right now, spending time with her and just nurturing her and being there with her, she just requires more time based on where she is. Now, my wife, she requires time, but it's all intentional. And so here's the key in being able to spend time with your peeps, whether it's your kids, whether it's your spouse, it's being intentional. It's knowing exactly how they receive love and what to do in that time. Like a lot of my clients, they would say, hey man, when I asked them, I said, well, when you spend time with your kids, what do you actually do? And the truth is, most of them don't even know what to say to their kids or how to spend quality time with their kids. Now, that's a question you should ask. What are the things that you do when you spend time with your kids? How do you engage with them? How do you interact with them? Is it just like us sitting down, not really doing much? Or are you able to have a full-blown conversation with them? And here's the thing. Don't feel guilty if you don't know, because maybe you weren't taught or it wasn't something that you modeled from your parents where they showed you how to effectively communicate with your kids or communicate with you when you were a kid. So it's nothing to feel guilty about. Here's one thing that I have even used because I feel like it's really helpful. I use intimacy cards. Intimacy cards. Now, when it comes to intimacy cards, now it doesn't mean intimacy from a sexual standpoint. It means me getting to know you. And so how I like to break it down is into me see. So I want to see what's going on inside of you. And I'm going to allow you to see what's going on inside of me. And so intimacy cards are used to be able to understand your kids. And I remember over the summer, while my son, he spent time here, we use these intimacy cards, and I learned so much about him. And he felt heard because he was able to express things that he wouldn't typically express, because nobody is typically just walking around asking about very specific things. And so it's really, really good and cool to have these kind of like outlets and games where you get to learn the most random thing, not only about your kids, but even with your spouse. So, intimacy cards is one of the things that I would highly, 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 highly suggest that you do if it is that you have parent guilt. Because what that's going to do is it's going to allow you the opportunity to get to know your kids just beyond telling them what to do. Most people just tell their kids what to do and they move on. And if that's what you do right now, where you just tell your kids what to do, I'm actually begging you to stop that. Because telling your kids what to do only makes them put up a wall. And it pushes them away, and they're less likely to have a high level experience with you if this is something that you practice. So start to get to know your kids, get to understand them, get to be able to let them be vulnerable with you. Because vulnerability is what you're actually looking for, vulnerability. And the thing is, getting to know them earlier than later just allows them the time, because here's what happens. If it is that they don't have clear access to you right now, they don't have clear access and they don't have the ability to come to you to talk to them about things, then who are they going to talk to? Who are they talking to? They're talking to someone. They're learning things from somebody. If it ain't you, then who is it? This is one of the things that you always have to consider when it comes to your kids. Because if they're not learning from you, then who are they learning from? They're learning from somewhere. And so recently I was having a conversation with one of my boys at the gym, and he also has a 14-year-old. And we had a conversation around sex. Like, how do you approach having this conversation around sex? And for me, my son is 14, but we've started having this conversation at least 3 years ago. Because the fact of the matter is, like, he's hearing about it. Like, he's hearing about it way more and earlier than I heard about it. And I heard about it when I was like 13, 14, maybe no, earlier, like 11. And so I started having a conversation with him. And although he felt weird talking about sex with me, I made it my duty to have that conversation. And so that first conversation was like, he would say things like, "Dad, this is awkward." Okay, cool. Let it be awkward. But now, like years after, and just continuing to have the conversation, now he has the trust and the ability to come to me and say, there's a young lady that he likes. Right? Like, if we make these conversations with our kids feel like it's something they should not do or shouldn't talk about, although we know they're having the conversations outside, then we need to eat that frog. We need to be able to really approach them so that they know that nothing is off limits. I mean, think about it for you. I can't talk for everyone, but think about it. Did you have a very open, clear means of communication with your parents? If the answer is yes, then you don't have this problem. But if the answer is no, where you did not have a clear means of communication with your parents, then it might be wise for you to start opening the conversation with your kids about difficult conversations. Start talking about sex. Start talking about drugs. Start talking about all of the things that they are already having conversations about. Like the time period from when I started learning about sex and all these things, I believe that time period has dramatically decreased simply because of the access to information. Think about when you got a phone, when you got a cell phone. Kids are getting cell phones now when they're like 9, 10, 8. And so they have access to information, and it's not that they're gonna go looking for it, but what does an ad, a pop-up, all those things pop up and just starts, infesting their phones. like this is reality. And people that's within their class, they're gonna be talking about these things. So here's the thing. Would you rather your kids learn about these difficult conversations from you, or would you rather the source be some other kid who doesn't even understand it themselves? That's what you have to think about. So if it is that you're like not trying to have the conversation, that's cool. But if it is that you avoid the conversation, somebody's going to have that conversation with them. And so you have to live with that on your conscience, really. Now, how does this relate to having parent guilt? Being able to have these conversations is going to let your kids feel like the door is open, and so they would be more vulnerable with you to share how they actually feel. When someone or a kid can express how they actually feel, the likelihood of you feeling guilty because it will go down dramatically, because they will have shared exactly how they felt about things. And so it's really a matter of getting your kids and your spouse to open up and share things ahead of time. This is what I do for my family, my kids, to be able to share vulnerably with me, and I know exactly how to fill their cup. So I hope these tips were helpful for you. I'm going to end it here today, and stay tuned, but remember that success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure. Peace, y'all.